Hey guys, this is Locke. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the endgame build for Safiyyah. When I say endgame, I don't actually mean any of the content in the game right now, but probably even more difficult content where enemies have a very high HP pool and they're also doing a lot of damage. I think Safiyyah can contribute significantly to that fight, and there are two things that is actually going to help her to do that. The very first thing that is like the crucial thing about her build in the end game is going to be this skill. Because regardless of how much attack the enemies have, you are able to dodge all single target attacks for one turn. You're also able to use different skills to bring this cooldown down from 3 to 1 as well, which I'm going to touch on in a bit. But the other crucial thing about the end game build is going to be her Hangman's Mark. With the Hangman's Mark, you're able to both increase your survival and also do more damage to them as well. So let's start talking about this skill. This skill is going to, as I said, dodge all single target attacks. To reduce the cooldown from 3, you can use, everyone will be able to have access to this talent, the flag, which lasts for quite a few turns, and usually by the time it's done, like it expires, you can use it again either right away or within a couple of turns. This is able to reduce the skill cooldown of all skills by 1 turn, and this is like constantly active, right, as long as the flag is there. So automatically you're able to bring the cooldown down from 3 to 2, and everyone should be able to do that. A lot of people did pull for Cocoa, and at some point when she's 5 stars, like mine is not 5 stars yet, I don't think I got a single copy of her after the initial one, but I think I got her on the first day. So from then to now, I was already able to get her to 4 stars, and I think I need like 35 more days to get her to 5 stars. And so if anybody else pulled her on the first day, I believe you'll probably be in the same boat as me, unless you have not been farming her shards or you were not at level 60, so you got a little bit less shards or something like that. But for the most part, I think most people that have got her on the first day that she was released have her around the 5-star capabilities in like 30, 40, 45 days or something like that. So with that, you will basically be able to guarantee that the happiness buff is on your allies, and that is going to reduce the cooldown again from, now it was 2 with the flag, so it's going to reduce it from 2 to 1. So you can basically use that skill every single turn. You can also do the same thing with Akambe's Rich Reward skill, which also reduces the cooldown by 1 turn. So with that, you're able to use Safiyyah's Shadowless Blade basically every turn. If you're able to bring her and Cocoa, which is 5-star, and Akambe, the 3 of them already will be able to make sure that she's able to use this skill every turn. Because she's using this skill every turn in this, in this end game build, or at least trying to use it as much as she can, the other skills that she brings, if she's bringing other active skills that are not instant, she won't really have any time to use it. For example, I really like this anti-espionage skill, especially at 1 star, because it was really hard to get her to mark the enemies that I needed. But with this skill, it gives them a mark and it brings another, a summon to the field, which is quite a lot of damage. And then that summon is going to attack and then trigger her reaction. It's a fantastic skill, and enemies sometimes won't attack the summon, although it's going to die in 2 turns. So it does a lot of stuff. But imagine the end game where you're going up to an enemy and you're using the skill, and then they just come and knock her on the head, and she's dead, right? So instead, most of the time you'll be wanting to use Shadowless Blade. So because of that, you can only bring passives or instants, and she has really good passives. This one is a really good passive to use in the end game, or especially when she is 3, 4, 5 stars. It's not so good at 1 star, and the reason for that is because at 1 star she's only able to mark one enemy with the with her trait. So most of that time, that enemy is usually already dead, and even in, like, say, boss fights, when you're marking it 1 turn, her speed is 179. If the boss's speed is, say, 150, between 179 and 150, your allies have to go right in between there to take advantage of this passive. Otherwise, after the boss takes the turn, the boss will not have the mark anymore anyway. But in the end game, we're assuming, it's sometime in the future where she will at least probably be 4 stars, if not 5 stars. This mark is going to last a while, and it's also going to mark more enemies. And we're assuming that these enemies are also tough, that you can't just one-shot them. So you want to do as much damage as possible. So this skill then becomes a fantastic skill to have because, you want to get as much damage out of your allies as possible. And this skill adds to that. It's going to mark at least 2 of them. And with the proposed build that I have, you're actually going to have a third mark as well. So from 3 allies, you're going to be, from 3 enemies to 3 enemies, you're going to be doing a lot more damage, 15% more damage from your attack. This skill is situationally good. The reason it's situationally good in the end game is because I don't actually know what kind of enemies you'll be facing in the end game. For example, you might be facing normal enemies, but they just have like 50k health. In that case, this is probably a good skill to have because, it'll be doing 15% of damage. But if the enemies that you're fighting are elite enemies, or if they just have a passive or like some kind of trait or something that makes them immune to piercing damage, then this skill doesn't really do much damage anymore, right? And furthermore, whenever it does trigger, it might trigger and do very little damage, and then the mark is going to disappear as well, which we don't really want. So in the end game, you really want to take advantage of this and the mark. So you want the mark to be there, kind of as long as possible. So depending on if these enemies are immune to the piercing effect or not, this could be situationally a good skill to bring or not. Instead, the one that I recommend is actually the tactic adjustment. There are 2 reasons why this is a good skill. One is because, say there's a situation where you are fighting breakers, and these breakers are not going to target Safiyyah. They're going to target whoever is next to you because Safiyyah is a seeker. You want them, they're going to target whoever they can do the most damage to, which is probably a defender. You can use this skill to change your class from seeker to, a defender. That would make her be targeted by enemies. So you can use the tactic adjustment first, and then you can follow it up with the Shadowless Blade. So that way, these enemies, these breakers, will target her, and then she will not take any damage from it because she's going to avoid all those attacks and attack them back. So that is, you can use this skill to be able to get enemies to target her. And the second thing you can do with it is there are probably going to be stages when you're fighting where you might fight like a few enemies that are all doing single target attacks, but then there may be 1 or 2 enemies that are doing AoE attacks. And so those AoE attacks, again, at the end game build could be doing massive amounts of damage, and she wants to survive. So using this skill gives her a 30% damage taken decrease boost. So her survival will be increased by basically 30%. This will help her to take the odd AoE damage much better than without. So using the skill is twofold. One, it can help people to target her with those single target attacks by changing her class. And the other one is that if they are doing AoE attacks, she can more easily survive that because of the disguise buff. And because we're using a build where her cooldowns are low, the cooldown of this is going to go down from 2 to 1, right? We're assuming this is already going down from 3 to 2 or 3 to 1. So this will also go down from 2 to 1. So you should always be able to use this before this, as long as you have 2 energy every turn, which you should be able to do with our build, because if you notice, this flag also gives you 1 extra energy as well. As you can see, at the start of the turn, restores 1 energy and reduces all skill cooldown by 1. So this is giving you 1 extra energy, which a Akambe's skill also does, by the way, and Cocoa's skill doesn't do that, but Cocoa's skill reduces the energy consumption by 1. So in all, like all 3 of them have 1 way of reducing the energy needed by 1, and also decreasing the cooldown by 1 as well. So there should not be a problem using this skill basically every turn before you use this, if that's the way you're going. If you're going with this instead, then you don't even have to do anything. Both of these are just passives. So in the end game, this is how I envision her being played. But there's also another character that would make this whole team a lot more viable, and that is actually an SR character, which is Candlelight. She is going to do 2 things that are, again, going to be crucial for this end game build. The first thing is her trait ability. Any enemy that have the Hangman's mark, your allies within 5 tiles of her take 20% less damage. So right now, I don't find this so useful because most enemies with the Hangman's Mark are usually dead. Like you just kill them, so you're taking 0 damage from them anyway, right? But again, in the end game build, we're assuming that these enemies are going to do a lot more damage to us, so we want to be able to survive these things. And having this, the Hangman's Mark on them, and now you're taking 20% less damage from them. So this is a really really good skill to have, and you don't need to have other allies with Hangman anything, just any allies, right? Allies within 5 tiles around this character take 20% less damage if the attackers have the Hangman's Mark. In addition to that, you can also use her Wanted Notice to give more Hangman's Mark. Like we're assuming that Safiyyah's trait is going to mark 2 enemies, so you can use this to mark a 3rd enemy with the Wanted Notice. So the Candlelight not only gives your whole team a buff of 20% damage taken buff, 20% less damage taken buff, she also increases the Hangman's, a 3rd enemy with the Hangman's Mark. She's also able to do a bunch of other things as well. She's able to give 4 energy to your allies, and she's able to function a little bit as a healer. You can also use her to do other things as well, like even more energy restore if you want, or some damage and healing. She can do other things, but these are the 2 main things that she can do that function really well in this build. Apply more marks and also make your whole team take less damage. So with that, that's really how I see her being played kind of in the end game. Again, this is assuming that, like there are enemies out there that are going to be doing a lot of damage and not take so much damage. Like if anything can be killed in like one shot, then there's no point. Like you don't need to be able to bring something that is, you don't need to be marking random enemies with Hangman's Mark. It doesn't matter. But if you are having 2 to 3 enemies that are marked with these Hangman's Mark like every turn or so, Safiyyah's trait is also going to activate and do a lot extra damage with the Fortune ability, the Course of Fortune. I find that the damage tick from this applies quite often, and if it does apply once, it lasts for 2 turns. So if you get the buff that is going to do AoE 10% damage to enemies 3 spaces around her, that's going to last for 2 turns at least. And so I find that is, that does quite a bit of damage. At 1 star, 2 star, it wasn't really that noticeable because you're just fighting one enemy. There's only one enemy with this mark, and you're just fighting them and killing them, right? But now that you have more enemies that are going to be around you, and you're going to mark 2 of them, maybe 3 of them if you have Candlelight, this skill is going to, do AoE damage to them, and then 2 to 3 of them are going to take significant damage from her trait. So all in all, like these are the 2 components that make her really really strong at the end game build with the Shadowless Blade and the mark. So I wanted to kind of show you how some of these concepts look like in practice. So I wanted to do the fireside chat, Act 3, and this is difficulty level 75. Everything is selected. And I'm going to be using Safiyyah, Akambe, to lower her cooldown, and I'm also going to be using Candlelight. So, I'm going to be using the Flag of Convaleria as well. And for Safiyyah, I'm actually going to be using the Settlement because these enemies are not immune to piercing. I mean, there are elite ones that take like 50% damage, and then there's the boss, but I have to first deal with all the other enemies first, right? So I'm going to be using this build here, Tactic Adjustment, Settlement of the Hangman, and then Shadowless Blade. Along with that, I have Akambe, who has mainly this skill, but he's also going to be doing a bit of damage with the Shadow Assassins as well. And then I have Candlelight here, whose main purpose is, reducing the damage, marking enemies, and also providing energy as well. So yeah, I'm going to start the fight, and I'll comment as I go through. So I just want to make sure what buffs she has here. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to move her over here. Once I'm just kind of showing you what the rotation of the skills is. Once you figure it out, it's not that complicated. Like once you see what's being done. But I thought it would be nice to just kind of show you exactly what the rotation looks like, so you can kind of take a look. So I mean, all these enemies are doing single target damage and they're all missing. I changed her type to the Watcher type because there are some destroyer enemies, so hopefully that Watcher type is going to do a little bit more damage to them and kill them a little bit quicker. So I'm going to start using the flag now to reduce her cooldown by 1, and then I'm going to use a Akambe here to reduce her cooldown by 2, so that next turn you'll see that she can use the dodge again right away. And that attack over there, so this guy was able to use an AoE attack, that's why she took some damage. He used the Eroding Darkness. The attack is 5,282, the multiplier of 55%, so maybe that's like 2,600 damage, right? She has 1,380 defense, right? So the rest, she only took like 1,000 something damage, but she has quite a few defenses on her. She has that disguise that's taking 30% less damage. Candlelight skill is not active right now because this person does not have the Hangman's Mark. So once they have the mark, Safiyyah will take even less damage. Actually, the whole team will take even less damage. Now for Candlelight, I'm actually going to restore energy of Akambe because Safiyyah is basically always going to have like full energy. As she's dodging, she's getting more energy, right? So I'm going to be using her to restore energy on Akambe right now to do some extra damage there with Akambe. Fighting these minions are pretty easy. I mean, once you figure out the rotation and you know what to do, the boss fight becomes a little bit more difficult, and I might have to go back a bit, like backspace a bit or something, because the bosses can still do damage through Safiyyah's dodge because they do like HP damage, and also they summon that stinger, and sometimes the stinger will go and attack one of my other units like Akambe or Candlelight, and if it does that and they die, I mean the run is done. You have to restart again, right? So if that happens, I mean I would have to restart the game again, which sometimes has happened before. I tested this out a couple of times, but yeah, that has happened before. So let's see, kill off these enemies. Nice, perfect. Okay, and I'll just go and hit this guy in the head. Okay, so as you can see, there are two things in this stage specifically that's benefiting Safiyyah. One of them is that she's getting this mark, which is basically forcing enemies to fight her as well. So they're targeting her instead of other enemies, which basically helps me by not worrying my other allies getting hit unless Safiyyah is not able to be targeted, so they attack someone else. But it is helping me to not have to worry about them, right? So in a real game, this might not be fully possible. Like I might have to bring another tank to make sure that my other allies are not being targeted at all. Like sometimes it's just unavoidable. Like right now, I'm trying to avoid them getting hit even once, right? But in those cases, I would probably bring like Cocoa or something and make sure for the unavoidable hits by my other allies, Cocoa is able to take that. The other thing that's kind of helping is that they also reduced my Safiyyah speed, so she's going last. And because she's going last, that dodge is basically lasting for even longer, right? So I will go over here and no, I can't go over there. The reason I can't go over there, this is something you have to be careful about. If you're using this flag, it's only valid for 5 spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is where I can go. If I go anywhere closer than that, Safiyyah will actually not be able to benefit from the flag's cooldown reduction. So I have to be wary of that when I'm doing this. But otherwise, I mean, as you can see, like this is a pretty fair, like a pretty simple rotation. If I needed to slow Safiyyah down, I can also use Edda's wine barrel, right? Like I can throw that on her to make her go, later, and it would help with rotations as well. So here again, I can use this one to make her dodge last longer. Here I'll probably use the Wanted Notice, because the Wanted Notice also heals my allies as well. I don't know if one of them has like a, what's it called? Okay, Akambe has that, like a no healing debuff. So sometimes these enemies throw that on my allies as well. So again, like she can basically use this as often as I need to, right? So I feel like this is quite an effective like end game kind of build. Because regardless of how strong, okay, what's going on here? Why did they attack this one? So this is what I mean. Like this guy probably got marked by someone. I mean, like, these guys have a random chance to mark, right? So probably the mark happened to land on Akambe, so they're instead targeting Akambe. So that could happen. Thankfully, Akambe didn't get killed, or else I would have to um, maybe, I guess, restart this run or something. Not restart, but like go backspace, I guess. But anyway, let's hopefully we can just finish this off here. Okay. So I might make a few mistakes here when it comes to the boss, because this boss is a little bit more difficult. Let me just make sure this guy doesn't have the healing. He does have the healing debuff. Is it completely? Cannot receive healing. Okay, so I'll wait until next turn to start healing him. And then I will try to figure out how to approach this boss here. But I mean, I hope, like, even if I don't end up killing this boss, I hope you can see how this works, right? Like, I hope you can kind of understand, the flag, and then using a skill like this to reduce her cooldown for dodge, and then also using the tactic adjustment to increase her defense, and like all the damage that she's doing with both the trait and her dodge attacks, like the counter attack upon dodge. So let's wait until everybody gets in position. So I'm actually going to be using Akambe here, not this turn, but the next turn, because right now I want him to be fully healed up. So the next turn I'm going to attack. Okay, well, I'm going to start by using Akambe to attack. So I'm going to go here, use this thing to attack. The reason I can only move here is because I need him to kind of be in position of Safiyyah. You'll see what I mean. So let's move him here, and then have him attack like this. And then for her, sometimes she also gets marked. So I'm going to try to move her out of the way, maybe over here. Okay, and then I'm going to use Safiyyah over here to, well, this, like the class itself doesn't matter now, because there is no defender class that's better than, the enemy Safiyyah. And the Watcher doesn't receive extra damage from any class right now. So I'm just doing this to have my 30% defensive buffs. Okay, see, this is what I mean. Like, sometimes this guy will come here and attack that guy. And so, it's really hard. I don't know what to do about it. I have to, backspace and try to figure out some other combination that makes it so that he only targets my Safiyyah and not my Akambe. So, I don't know, maybe I'll try one more thing. If it doesn't work, then, that's what it is. So let's try... Let's try something like this, maybe. So having two assassins is going to also be able to make them targeted. So maybe they'll target an assassin instead of Akambe with his with their skill. If it doesn't work, honestly, I'm just gonna give up because I don't want to spend. It might take a little bit of time to figure it out, and I mean, I hope you understand the point that I'm trying to make across with this. So if it doesn't work, I'm gonna end the game. But I hope you understand what I'm trying to show here with Safiyyah's build. So let's see. So let's try this. Actually, why don't I just use this, change as much things as I can, and maybe this time something is different. Let's see. Nope, it's the same. Okay, so that's it. I'm not gonna try again because I already beat the stage anyway, and I had to just do a few different moves to make the stinger target Safiyyah. But that's I hope you can kind of see what this build looks like and how this works. Um, so let me know your thoughts. I think this is a pretty strong build for her end game. Like I don't think there's much point in using this before like end game where you have multiple enemies that are very difficult, because if you can just kill them like very easily, there's no point in like setting all this up, right? Like there's no point in using the skill to take less damage because you're just gonna kill them. So what's the point? And then also like unless you have it at least at 3 stars, you're only going to be able to target, like you're only going to be able to mark one enemy. So even the Hangman's debuff doesn't become that useful. So this is really an end game build where your characters have progressed a bit, and now you're fighting like a lot harder content where you can't just go and steamroll them and like just kill them off like easily, right? Even for me, like right now, this is 3 stars, but this debuff only lasts 1 turn. So really, this is going to start shining at 4 stars, and then at 5 stars, where like the range goes from 4 to 6 tiles. That's when it starts becoming like really really powerful. And also like the damage portion of this also becomes huge too, right? At 3 stars, that's 24%, and then at 4 stars, sorry, at 5 stars, it goes all the way up to 32%. So again, as I said, this is like a more of an end game build where things you're fighting are more difficult. It's not even a boss fight build, because I don't think it's like, for a boss fight you're only fighting most of the time one single enemy, so you don't need to mark like a couple of enemies, and there might be more efficient heroes you can use than Candlelight for a boss fight, unless the boss is actually like killing you too fast and you really need to get some kind of extra defense. Then I guess you could bring Candlelight. But most of the time, I would assume that there are better heroes to bring, like even Outlaw Guard, because the Outlaw Guard can decrease the boss's attack with this one, which might actually just be a lot more efficient than trying to bring your defenses up. Like the skill just might be a lot more efficient in accomplishing the same thing, and you can do other things as well and deal more damage by decreasing the boss's defense, and so on and so on. So this is really like an end game build where you're not just fighting a single enemy, but you're fighting a group of enemies, and the entire group that you're fighting, everyone is really difficult. They're all like very high level and sturdy and do a lot of damage and so on. So anyway, that's it for me. That's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any comments, or if there's something that I'm not looking, or if there's like, you guys played on other servers and hey, you know what, that doesn't work at all because this is actually how the enemies will be, so what you're saying doesn't make sense, let me know. Because I am, honestly, I am theory crafting, because like I'm looking at, this one, the fireside chat, and I feel like the enemies that we'll fight will be even more harder than this, in my opinion. So I'm just like, okay, what can I bring? How can I build Safiyyah to deal with this? And this is what I came up with. But I might be completely wrong, and honestly, that's okay, because if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. So let me know. I would love to hear from you guys, and that's all from me. So I will, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time. Take care now.